Yes. When you wake up and you feel like you need a little up, when you're down and out and you need to get a little higher. If you feel like you need a blessing and you feel a little high today, welcome to the church of Cali High. Cali High. Cali High. Yow!
Welcome to Cali High, episode 49. This week we speak with Master Hollywood arranger and orchestrator Steven Scott Smalley, aka Scotty, who I have known since kindergarten and who has remained a friend of mine for 60 years. Scotty has orchestrated over 100 movie scores, including Batman and Robocop, and started professionally at age 21, arranging for the hit TV show Charlie's Angels. He developed an orchestration technique, which he taught for 10 years at UCLA's Extension, and started the Film Music Institute, teaching a worldwide network of enthusiasts for 21 years. We speak of our early days selling high-quality cannabis in the 818 and the effect the herb had on the Hollywood music scene. Scotty also describes how cannabis enlightens the mind and inspires creativity as well as boosting productivity. This is an episode not to miss. Stay tuned. Okay, Cali High is blessed to be here with Scott Smalley, one of my oldest friends. Scotty, how long have we known each other?
We have known each other for 60 years.
60 years. We went to the same kindergarten class at our Menta Street School. Our teacher was Miss Holmes.
Mrs. Holmes, I'm
Mrs.
sure.
Holmes, yeah.
Yeah, she was the nicest teacher in the world.
Yep. And I remember our brown mats we used to take naps on.
Yes. We would have milk in the afternoon.
A little carton of milk.
Then we'd have to have nap time afterwards. And I do remember knowing that you were kind of off to my side and kind of making some fidgety noises. And I could tell that you were thinking, man, this is ridiculous. This is for kids, man. Let's get outside.
Well,
my first impression of you was, wow, finally a proper criminal.
all the way back in kindergarten.
In kindergarten,
Right.
I was thinking, we could blow this joint. If he and I teamed up right now, we could get out of this room and on the jungle gym.
So, after kindergarten, we saw each other passing on the streets. I went to Holy Rosary, and you lived near Holy Rosary.
Right.
Rosary. And, but then I moved away, and you moved away, and we didn't see each other again until high school. I think it was towards 12th grade.
Here's the other thing, though. I do remember hearing about you and your family from my mom. Somehow there was a lady that lived on Stag.
Polly Piggott.
What?
Polly Piggott?
Possibly. I don't even know. But, and then because my mom knew that your dad was a director and that your older brother was boyfriend and girlfriend with our across the street neighbor, Janie.
Oh, wow.
So I had like...
Janie Johnson.
Janie Johnson. So I had peripherally...
Shout out to Janie, wherever you are.
Yeah, I had peripherally known of you, but more importantly, I knew that your dad was a director and that you were a class above the normal Sun Valley kids that I knew. For sure. You could tell that you were definitely smarter than everybody else.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
But Holy Rosary had taken you. Yeah.
So,
and I was sad and it was kind of like a divide between the Catholic school and the normal school. What would you call our school? Secular school?
Yeah. Secular, public school.
But yeah, so I do definitely remember you all the way through there.
And you. And then, so I ended up selling weed. My dad died. My mom got remarried. Stepfather kicked me out of the house. I moved around a bunch in the valley, went to 4 or 5 different high schools.
Most importantly, though, you moved to Encino.
true. I moved to Encino. Mom had moved to Encino after she kicked my stepfather out of the house, and I moved back in with her for 12th grade. Went to Reseda.
And I went to your bedroom there on Alonzo.
Alonzo Place. Yep.
And I thought you were just the perfect person to team up with.
So, what was the first things you can remember about the weed we were doing? What were we selling back then? I know.
Well, we were selling the most incredible golden Colombian gold.
Yep.
That was just incredible. And then, like, after you cut it up into ounces, like the powder underneath afterwards, that was by far that was just head and shoulders of anything else that we'd ever seen.
Oh yeah.
And then we started getting into Thai stick.
Yeah, but we still there was a few other colors of Colombian besides the gold, right?
It went from gold to Thai stick, and then it went to purple.
Uh-huh.
By the end of 1974, we found our first purple buds, and we were out of our minds. So we went on the search for the purple strain, and your brother, though, your older brother, was getting some very powerful strains that I'd never seen before. How did he come about that?
Was he getting them from Ron? No, I think he was getting from Don Chrissy. Are we letting people's names out here?
No, it's okay. It's past the statute of limitations.
Yeah, that's right.
And may I say also that everybody involved that would have any problem with what happened back then has passed.
Most likely.
And now that they're in the hereafter, they can look down and see that really what we did, even though it was like highly criminal activity, it was really for society's own good, for the better.
And speaking of the benefit of society,
and what I liked about Vinny was the fact that I could see he was able to just break every rule he saw right in front of everybody's faces, and just walk around head up saying, yeah, that's right. I broke that rule right in front of you. Hey, and guess what? I'm making up a new rule. I think I might just make you follow.
Wait a minute. It wasn't that dictatorial, I must say.
This was the people in our surroundings that kind of were amateurs, kind of were in that teenage, well, not kind of, we were in that 18-year-old newfound freedom stage. And you had a code. You had a code that you lived by, and more importantly, a business code. A business code of how you do a sustainable business without cutting out people and making sure everybody's happy and making sure everybody makes a good profit.
Right. And there was a lot of middlemen back then.
A lot of middlemen, but making sure all your connections are happy, and more importantly, your connections, but more importantly, your customers.
Well, it was hard to be dissatisfied with the quality of weed that we were putting out there.
So, by far, I now talking to other girls that I remember back then. It was actually the girls' bathroom at Van Nuys High School that confirmed. I've now, through the years,
I was never there.
Girls that were in that bathroom at Van Nuys High School confirming, yes, by far, we had the gourmet pot. We had the best pot ever.
Right.
And it changed everybody's lives.
It did, didn't it?
It changed everybody's lives. for the better, because up to that point, 1972, 1974, it was all really bad Mexican green.
Although I must say, before we got back together, I was getting really good Mexican. But
you didn't really get high. You didn't really get that high.
Wait,
I mean, it was.
I got it. Hold on. We got like amazing Oaxacan. Right? The amazing Oaxacan spirits.
It wasn't called. It was called seedless. Remember that?
Oaxacan wasn't seedless?
Wasn't? Okay.
No.
Okay. There was another one. There was one kind that was seedless. That was the kind that you wanted to get first of all. And then once we got that, I was like, okay, I'm getting a little high.
Always having a high tolerance, aren't we, Scotty?
So I'll say the first time I ever smoked pot was at Silver Strand Beach, and just fell in with some rough and tumble CBs from the Bay.
Because that was right next to Port Wayne.
Right next to there, on Silver Strand. And they had some pot, and I got my first hit of pot, and the first thought that went through my mind was, wow, I can't wait until I can sit in front of a piano. Hi.
Oh, wow. A great thought. Indeed.
The first thought.
Oh, I just got my piano tuned last night, bro.
Right on.
Sorry.
So I just realized, man, if I could just take a hit of this and sit in front of the piano, I would be off to the races.
It did unlock certain creative juices, didn't it? And it still does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my friend Scotty here, folks, is an arranger and has been. And let me see. Probably the most famous movie that you arranged was the first Batman movie with Keaton. What's his name? And it was done by Danny Elfman. You arranged for Danny Elfman on.
Yeah, the story behind that was we had in the 80s with that composer that lived on Alonzo, that you would hear the backstory. You would ride your bike up Alonzo and hear this piano up this driveway to the right as you're going up. Mm-hmm. And that was the great Basil Polidorus.
Mm-hmm. This is right up down from my mom's house.
He lived, and so that's why it's important to point out how moving to Encino, how our involvement with that kind of neighborhood, that upper echelon of successful people, made us think harder. It made you think harder. You changed. Once you're around that kind of level of more intellectual types, you try to buck up. You try to come up a level, rather than like in Sun Valley, you're constantly being dragged down. You're trying to be stupider to make other people not feel bad about, you being smart.
Yeah. Well, economic reality sometimes dictate these things, but it's important to point out that you elevated your consciousness. Remember your bedroom there? You were like an ascended master, guru master in your bed. You had like an Indian rug. You had incense. You're sitting in the lotus position. I was way advanced for being 18. And I still have my piano that I had back then, too.
That you had back then. Yeah. That's right. And you were smoking pot right under your mom's nose. And I remember she was not happy, but like you're like going, hey, in your face.
She had already been through my brother, so it wasn't a big deal.
It was because your brother, and she was already accustomed to it.
Yeah. So the reason I mentioned the fact that you are an arranger and have worked with so many amazing people is because there's a funny story you tell about how pot affected music in Hollywood, and I was wondering if you could relate that for our listeners a little bit.
Yeah. So what really was the impetus for the evolution of the Hollywood? It started with TV and then it progressed to movies. But what happened was because we had embarked on this higher grade of marijuana. Because I had literally said to you, because I have a higher clientele, I have a high-end clientele. Those were the words I said to you exactly on our first meeting in Topanga. I said, I really need to find really high quality pot because I was planning on handing it off to my father's bosses, who were Jack Elliott and Alan Ferguson, who at that time in 1974 had a lock on all the prime time, the variety shows at that time. So remember like the Everly Brothers show back in like, I remember going to the Everly Brothers show and like being, I couldn't be in the audience because I was too young. And because, it was going to air at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock. But anyway, yeah. So we were doing those early 70s TV extravaganza shows. And then what happened is it progressed because in 1974, when I met you, that's when I said, I have a high-end clientele. That was the clientele that I was planning on selling to because through the couple years before that, we were going into their office and sneaking buds out of their desks. And so we knew the pot they were smoking was really trash. This happened because we must mention the great Jeff Grove, because he all through my youth, I knew him from year zero. We're all the same exact age, and so he was very foregoing. He was always a step ahead of me. And that was the thing about Jeff. He would dare me to do things. And then
his dad was Dick Grove, who had a music school in Studio City.
His father was Dick Grove, who the Grove Music Workshops.
And there's another story about that, but we'll...
And so the deal was that we were stealing pot out of their desks every night, and because we had keys to every room of that building, and so we had run of the place all day, every day, all night, every day, and so we knew their pot was bad, and so Jeff goes, "Buddy, just take." So we got an ounce from you. And we're like, oh my God, this pot is insane. He goes, man, just go take that ounce into their office and see what and just give it to them and see what they think. I swear to
God. So you're like 18 and they're like 40, 50?
18. And they're not in their 50s. Because I remember when they hit their 50, that was later. But so they were in their 40s. So 74, my dad was 48, 47, 48. So I walked past my dad's office door, a couple of doors down, turned left into his boss's office. They go, hey, here, I want you to check this out. Try this. I handed him an ounce and just like, here, I can't remember what I said because I was nervous. Yeah. But I just go, something smart ass, like, yeah, there's more where this came from. Something like that. And just kind of, because I was on like personal speaking terms with them.
Yeah, this is Jack Elliott?
By that time, because I had started working in that office in 1971 as a stock boy. Stock room. And so, yeah, I was very familiar. And that was all through the Watergate here. It was just ridiculous all through those 70s. But so, yeah, I was on personal relationships with his bosses.
Jack Elliott.
But they were unbelievable. I mean, Jack Elliott was brought out by Judy Garland. Okay. So he was her arranger. Yeah. And then you look at his credits and just like, oh my God, he was like from that old school. And Alan Ferguson.
Yeah, both of our backgrounds are old Hollywood.
Old Hollywood giants. So they had a lock then from, like I say, I gave them that pot and it was an amazing transformation. We went from those variety shows. As I remember it, Jack started going out. He started making connections. He might have like given people this pot. I swear to God. Because then I gave him a pound of it. He's like, oh my God, where did you get this? I'm like, here you go. So they got elevated to the next level by fall and winter.
The next season. Yeah.
And then I could see the quality of work that we were bringing in was a next level. He went to somehow and to the different companies or whatever like that. And all of a sudden, he did a virtual hostile takeover of primetime network TV. And I remember going up to dinner at my parents' house one night. My dad's sitting in the middle of the kitchen, just like, and I'm like going, oh my God, it just in a chair. And my mom's just going, oh my God, something's going on. Sitting there, arms folded, and he goes, hey. Just had a meeting with Jack. He says he thinks we're a really well-oiled machine, and he's going out and getting us like these really big shows. And he wouldn't even look at me. And he looked sideways at me, turned his eye, wouldn't turn his face to me, turned his eyes to me, and said, do you have anything to do with this?
Well,
wouldn't even look at me.
Yeah.
And then looked away and just kind of quietly stood up. And my mom's just nervously making dinner and stuff. And then we had dinner, and we was just like the next day. I'm going to the office. Because I was in the office every day doing whatever,
right?
Scores and lead sheets.
What were some of the TV shows, by the way, that you guys were doing?
So, the one we were doing every day was Charlie's Angels. But since that progressed to Dynasty. And what happened was, Charlie's Angels was kind of like an enhanced disco flavored jazz big band, kind of. If you think about it, that's Charlie's Angels, disco jazz, really. And, but that was the 70s.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we started.
Shout out to Suzanne Summers.
What?
Shout out to Suzanne Summers.
That was I can't remember. No, that was Reed Company. No, that was Farrah Fawcett. Charlie's Angels was Farrah Fawcett.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And then Diane Ladd. But anyway.
Okay,
yeah.
shout out to Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah, shout out
And
to
her
Farrah
poster.
Fawcett. And her poster, exactly. That's right, in the poster.
All right. I think that's what I was thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But so anyway, on Dynasty, I get the lineup for the first show, and it's the same Charlie's Angels disco big band. And I'm like, and I'm watching the first Dynasty show. I'd watched it. I knew what it was like. I'm going, because, standard orchestra for Charlie's Angels was like a couple trumpets, a trombone, mandatory 4 saxophones.
Mm-hmm.
And then
mandatory.
Mandatory. Yeah, 4 sax. And then drums, bass, guitar, and then cellos. They always gave us like 4 cellos sitting in the back that was supposed to be the drama, right? And so yeah, that's why I said, yeah, exactly. And then we had the first electronic keyboard, the synthesizer, the CS80. Remember that?
Yeah,
Remember?
I had one. It had a foot-long ribbon on it.
With the foot-long ribbon.
Polyphonic ribbon, man.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And that was that sound. That sound. And so, yeah. Oh,
it was also weighted keys, by the way, the 88.
Oh, yes. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And, boy, that was cutting edge. Oh, boy, we were the hippest. Everybody wanted to be on our. We had the top call musicians every time. That was the thing.
That's cool.
They're putting a 21-year-old kid in charge of doing these scores. I don't know how I got this. I guess I just because they trusted that I knew what I was doing.
Well, you are an amazing arranger, bro, and they recognize it from back then.
Yeah, but looking at back then, man, I really haven't, because I was stoned all the way through it. Now, here's the thing about the pot. Because we're getting such strong pot, and we turned on these guys onto this, and all of a sudden the business skyrocketed. And they're buying houses in Malibu and in London, and I'm seeing them just off, and it's me and my dad in the office doing all the work.
Yeah, well,
because they've
inequity.
They've sweet talked. They've written the themes.
Mm-hmm.
They've done the work.
So they got the publishing because they wrote the theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're incorporating the theme all through the show. Exactly. But so anyway, it was all because we elevated their consciousness through the higher quality of marijuana. I just know that for sure. Now, here's the other thing about myself is that I'm not your typical stoner. I looked at it more like it was more like a ritual.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've always been very spiritual.
Yeah.
And had a high tolerance as well.
Yeah. And my rules would be that I'd have to have all the technicalities, all the wires connected, everything ready to go. So there's no technical foul-ups, so I can get right to work.
And then take the hit, right?
But I'd have to have the score paper laid out.
Uh-huh.
I'd have to have the sketch laid out in front of me. I'd have to have it all ready. I might have to have my cup of tea all ready to go. And I have to be ready to put the pencil down with the first note. Uh-huh. Very key point. Having the pencil ready to be drawing the first note on the page. Then taking the first really powerfully strong hit and holding it as long as we can take it. And then as I'm holding it and as I'm holding it, kind of letting it sink in, as blowing it out, I'm blowing it out onto my pencil as I'm drawing the first note.
Mm-hmm. And now, a clip of Scotty's orchestration you may recognize from Tim Burton's Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson.
Shall we dance?
Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
That's an interesting ritual. I like
Now,
it.
I found out later that one of the Chumash Indian rituals that the sorcerers do is they gather their talisman together, put it in a conical dish or something like that, take a hit of something and blow it over their talisman as they're making their wish or
That's amazing, bro.
whatever, blowing smoke. So I was just doing that naturally. So, and then what I could do, I could literally go for hours on end, pure concentration. And I would make sure that I would do that ritual and have the phone off. Because I would have to produce, man.
Right.
I had to.
And when we say the phone off, we didn't have cell phones. We just had to unplug it from the wall.
I had to deliver.
Yeah.
I had a schedule like you wouldn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knew I could do 30 pages a day. Now that's 120 bars of.
That's quite a bit of copying there, bro.
Black with notes.
Yeah.
So all the heads of libraries knew my capacity, and so they would put me to my limit then. But the idea, though, they didn't realize is that I could do that in a 24-hour day. That was a 24-hour day.
Right.
That's no break.
Yeah, 3 normal work days for the normal person.
Yeah. 3 normal work. But the only way I could do that was with that powerful strain of pot. Now, what we did was we had found this strain of purple buds.
Right.
Towards the late 1974. And then I was on the search for that. And after a few months, somehow we found the most unbelievable strain of that purple. And so I bought pounds.
This is
of it.
pre-bean?
Yes.
Way before bean. Right. I just want to make sure you got your time.
Yeah. And
that was when, because the Coast Guard had cut off all the Colombian in 75, and then it basically died out by 78, and then there was Thai weed and the first Sensimea from Northern California, which was 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times as expensive as a Colombian elbow pound, right? But had no seeds.
Right.
And some of those were kind of purpley.
It was 75. You're right. It was spring of 75 that then we were getting in the purple. That was like unbelievable. There was a batch that was so incense-like fragrant that I
remember that. It was like Christmas time, wasn't it?
It was like Christmas, man.
Yeah.
And we were doing pounds of this. And I was buying pounds of it. I was buying like, I think the most I ever bought was like 10 pounds of it at a time. And we would divide it up then from there. But I kept 2 pounds of this one batch that just blew my mind. That I could take one little tiny hit of this and I could start writing music that was beyond anything I had written before. Unquestionably. And I was going to Cal State Northridge at the time. And this one strain of pot, I was able to take little, tiny little hits and go to class. I would smoke it in my Volkswagen van, go to class and just blow away everybody else in the room. Every class.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you.
No, I'm sure, bro.
No, it elevated my intellect to a level where I was just looking around. I was just going, man, wow, I'm really like I'm much higher than these.
Yeah. Well, I had a similar ritual when I would write a song. I would sit down, but I would always make sure I had my pen, the paper,
Yes.
sit down at the piano, and be ready. You know what I mean?
I'm not kidding you. It was this one specific strain that I bought 2 pounds of, and I was able.
Who did we get it from? Was that Ron? No. I don't know.
I kept telling you, man, more of this.
Yeah, there was some of the first seedless weed, right?
You
Some of
were
the first
very
seedless pounds.
You were very discreet. Now that's one thing about you. See, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
so you wouldn't tell.
Unless we went to the person's house together, but yeah.
No, this is the key to your success: is how you understand how to be discreet. How you taught me how to be discreet, business, and how the code it works, and how you can sustain a business. See how long you've been able to sustain it, whereas everybody else just dropped out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
because you understood how human nature works, and really what it is. What I learned more from our interaction business wise than any other university, music workshop ever. What I learned most importantly from you, Vinny, was whatever it takes, find the highest quality. And it doesn't have to be the highest quantity.
no.
As long as the highest quality, you will be known as a valued member of society.
Surely if you have the best weed.
In many, many ways. That goes beyond just the pot. Like I said,
Yes, it does.
I gave my dad's boss, Jack, this pot. I know that he started giving it to the other musicians in the orchestra, notably Emil Richards, famous percussionist for Frank Zappa, greatest percussionist in Hollywood ever. I think Danny Elfman inherited his warehouse of instruments, And
Did Danny Elfman get high?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, that's the thing, is that's the underground secret that I had to maintain.
Right.
You have to maintain that's what I learned from you. You don't go out blabbing.
Especially back then. Yeah.
Especially back then, for sure. So yeah, we elevated their consciousness by the quality of pot that you were able to procure. Unquestionably. And this had a ripple effect, not only from the corner of Ventura and Coldwater, which is where this all happened, but it had a ripple effect then into Hollywood. And
well,
then,
I met my present wife at Coldwater in Ventura.
Right there on Valley Heart and Coldwater, right?
Yeah. Actually, we met it right in front of Twain's.
Right in front of Twain's.
On a rainy day.
I would have lunch there at Twain's every day with my dad. Yeah, for sure. So that was like the epicenter of it. But that was like right across the street from, it was Hughes Market right there. And that was just next door to our workshop. Now that was that building where the workshop was, the Grove School of Music. That was the original Elliot Ferguson office.
And this is all across from the Sportsman's Lodge.
Yeah, all across from the Sportsman's Lodge.
Which was originally owned by Ray Fine, a friend of my dad's.
You've got to be kidding.
Do you know Charlie? Charlie's uncle owned the Sportsman's Lodge.
Tell me this now. So who is this?
My dad hung out with a guy named Ray and Barbara Fine, my mom and dad, and Ray owned the Sportsman's Lodge. You know, my dad was working in Hollywood. And years later, Charlie Fine, who is a great artist to this day, came over to my mom's, and my mom was like, "Oh, are you any relation to Ray and Barbara?" And Charlie's like, "That's my uncle." And so that's how we found out about that. But the Coldwater and Ventura connection goes on for generations.
For generations. Now that was the first. I mean, it was like kind of forest.
Mm-hmm.
And the LA River was going right behind it,
Yep.
which would flood periodically before they put the channel there, the wash. And my dad, he remembers a house floating down that river back in the 30s.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, so the Sportsman's Lodge was there because there was a little watering hole there.
Yep.
That you could fish in. Now, I went there when I was 0 years old. Because my grandmother had a house. My grandparents had a house when they had the first house there on Oakdale Road. And that was back in the 40s.
Wow.
And the Sportsman's Lodge then was the local hangout.
Oh, yeah.
And they had built a makeshift kind of wooden cabin looking kind of thing over this little fishing hole. That then you could sit in.
Little kids always went there to catch their first fish.
Yeah, you could sit there in the fold out chair and cast a line into it right there on Coldwater and Ventura and fish for trout.
Yeah.
Now, were they? It was probably stocked.
Yeah.
But
that was not a natural lake, I got to say.
But it was based on the fact that the LA River kind of formed a little pond there.
Yeah.
You know, periodically.
Yeah.
It would flood. You know. So yeah, that's our whole.
A little bit of history.
That's so amazing, and you know what I think is really interesting to point out though is that once me and Vinny were able to.
That's me, by the way.
Yeah, once Vinny and I were able to climb our way out of North Hollywood and Sun Valley, we were able to interact with much different clientele. And the business acumen required to stay friends with those types had to be elevated. And so you had to be smarter than you were back when you were growing up in Sun Valley. I had to all of a sudden be, oh, wow, these kids are like a step above, especially Vincent Nicoletti. So I have to step up my game. So here's what happened. I had come into $18,000 when I turned 18, which was the inheritance that was the last of the money that we had inherited from, the Ulysses S. Grant estate, from what was left over from his books that he wrote.
He's a distant relative of yours.
Distant relative, yeah. So I inherited. I inherited.
Not that distant if you get 18 grand.
Yeah. So I inherited, and this was designed to put me through college. But the first thing I did was, again, on a dare from Jeff, he goes, "Man, we just heard of this hash. Why don't we buy as much as we can get? We'll chop it up into grams and sell it. We'll make unbelievable amounts of money." I'm like, "What? Really? What? Okay. All right." So we bought 2 pounds of elephant stomp hash. And they came in what looked like chocolate large size pancakes.
Right. This is, I think, a red lab or something like that, right? Were they in cheesecloth bags?
Possibly. Yes, I think so.
Uh-huh.
Cheesecloth. I think so.
Yeah.
And so we put them out on the floor and took our first hit of hash that we'd ever had in our lives. And we looked at each other, and an hour later, we realized that was the first time we had actually gotten high.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Even though we smoked Colombian and everything like that, the hash was something else entirely.
Oh, yeah. And you're smoking concentrates now.
Oh,
yeah.
I think, the word was, the first time was OMG, was uttered. And so we spent the next day or whatever with the razor blades, cutting it up into grams on the scale, wrapping it up in tin foil, and selling those grams for $15 each. And when we were selling it, that was the thing that I learned early on, is that we were selling it to the kids starting in Topanga. Word got all the way from Topanga, Woodland Hills to Van Nuys. Like I say, the Van Nuys girls' bathroom was out of their minds buzz about the fact that they were finally getting high. And this was like new to them. So it went all the way down to, I'd say, Laurel Canyon. I don't think we got past Witsit, really, right? So our territory was Topanga to Witsit, kind of, really, wasn't it? Sherman Oaks.
Yeah, although there was, from our old neighborhood, the McConvilles, and Colin used to move.
Yes, for you, in Sun Valley. Our whole customer base was Studio City.
Yeah,
Sherman.
basically, yeah. There were an outlier or two, but yeah.
Not really that much in Tarzana. I don't know why. It skipped. And then
Woodland Hills.
And Topanga.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know.
Because I moved out of Tarzana. No, just joking.
No, you were in Encino. You were definitely. Yeah, you were the highest class kid I knew. Because I remember your dad.
Highest class. Middle class.
I remember your dad was a director. Now, that's the thing. When you're going up in Hollywood, my mom was always like, give me a sideways glance, like, take note of this. Take note of him. You possibly might be working with him someday. Constantly. All through growing up, childhood.
Too bad it wasn't.
What?
Too bad it wasn't for Desi Lou.
No, I started working for all these guys. Man.
No, you did.
It was mandatory. No, I remember The Rebel. Remember in the late 1950s, the TV show The Rebel?
Uh-huh.
It was music with Richard Markowitz.
Uh-huh.
And she said, you've got to listen to this, man. This is amazing music. And it was a story about the guy who was on the bridge, and the first episode is where he gets hanged, but he escapes, and then the whole season is about him. But then the end of it, it's like an enhanced Twilight Zone. Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Yeah.
And you find out he actually died. This was all a dream. But the music was Richard Markowitz. She's just like, you've got to, your dad's friend. And I knew Richard. He was like a guy. And she's like, man, you got to listen to this. He's like, oh, wow. And then this
is your mom?
Yeah, my mom made sure I was listening to all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why I say she made me know that your dad was a director.
Mm-hmm.
That kid that you see walking down Stag, that kid there, Janie's boyfriend, his dad. Well, yeah, that was the thing that was most important, but knowing about your dad. Yeah, sure. You're somebody to like respect.
Well, hope I still am. Although,
But then if you look back, you realize, when it was happening, when we were in the thick of it, we didn't think about it. We were just having fun.
Yeah.
We were just going, this pot is amazing. These kids are coming back like time after to buy this hash, man. So within a couple of weeks, I made back $7,000. So it was $5,000 profit. Now you could buy a house. We sold our house in Sun Valley for $18,000.
oh no, and my mom bought that house in Encino for $35,000.
35. So you could put a down payment on a house for the profit that I made into a house. Okay. So me and Jeff are just like, oh my God, this worked.
Uh-huh.
And so our thinking always, as usual, deviant criminals, if this worked, if this little bit worked, what happens if we try a lot?
Gee, let's up the scale a bit.
Let's up the scale a bit. So that's when Jeff went to Dave Monkarch and said, hey, we're putting the word out on the street. We're flush with cash. We got $5,000 we got to throw around. Put out the word. We want the highest quality marijuana money can buy. Price is no object.
Right, and Dave Monkarch was the bass player in my first band, if I remember correctly. It was either Jeff Grove or Dave Monkarch.
No, it was Dave.
It was Dave, because Dave lived over there off of
Haskell.
Yeah.
So that was how because he was in Encino, and he was one of those intellectual, business-minded, successful. His parents were successful. And so you were already circulating with the more successful crowd.
Uh-huh.
That's the key point.
Well,
that's the key point.
It's all relative, but yeah.
It's the crowd that we started. You were able to infiltrate early on, and then then Dave put the word to you.
Uh-huh.
Find the highest, most expensive pot. Price is no object.
Right, and this is when we did our first Colombian deal.
Right? You up to Topanga, and in my room, in front of my piano, we both looked at each other, and I was like, I know you from kindergarten.
Exactly. I still have the kindergarten picture. I'm going to fly it in about here somewhere in this episode.
And again, the second thought was, finally, again, a proper criminal.
From trying to get out of naps to selling elbows.
Everybody else I've been working with were amateurs, man. I knew finally we could do business here properly with professional. These are just kids, man. Let's start doing some business, man. Because like I said, then that's why I said to you, because I have high-end clientele. Yeah. That was the third sentence.
Uh-huh.
That was why I said, because I was planning on taking this to my dad's bosses and then infiltrating their, because I knew they all smoked pot.
Right.
I knew they all did. But it was a secret, of course.
Right.
And I knew as soon as I could turn them on to this higher level of pot,
the music would rise.
Our music would elevate. The business would be transformed. My dad's business would be more successful. He would be able to move out of Sun Valley. He was still living in Sun Valley. Uh-huh. When I made that $5,000 in 2 weeks, he was still making $100 a week. Drink that in.
I'm all out of coffee at the moment.
But now let me back up a couple years. Here's how I had the confidence. I didn't just like cold walk into their office.
Right.
Okay. My first foray into that office was my dad I had really good handwriting. I had talked my dad into doing a Saturday morning class when we were kids, when I was 14. So we were doing every Saturday morning we do like little performances and stuff, standards and arrangements. And so that progressed, but I had really good handwriting because I was more thinking I wanted to be an architect, really. So my drafting skills were far better than any musicians. My skills were much better. So my dad started letting me do lead sheets, and they were just like, really, a cut above, even copyists. So I started handing in my lead sheets. And they're the ones the singers reading when they're singing. Like I said, we're doing those variety shows. And so they're singing, it's like an arrangement, and sometimes it's a medley. And so the singer has to see all the cues on their lead sheet. So I have to write in, here's the violins, here's the trumpets, here's when here's when that happens. Right. So it is more involved. You have to really, work it out. So I'm handing in my lead sheets, and the copyist looks at my lead sheet. Hey, Joe Estrin. And he looks at it and he goes, "This is unbelievable." He takes me by the hand, walks me for the first time past my dad's office. A couple years later, I'm going to be walking past again. And he walks me into their big office, the big boss's office, and there, Jack Elliott, Alan Ferguson, and this very famous other arranger, Eddie Karam, and they're, for the first time, looking at that water fountain. Emil Richards has just brought over that first water fountain. That's a bowl that's welded, that's got the sprongs in it, and they're blowing it, and then like going.
What was it called?
Water fountain. It was the first time they seen this water, and so we're always looking for sounds we can get.
Right. It was like a theremin with water or something like that.
No, you put water in it. It's like got a muffler pipe, and then like you bow it. Those tiny.
Oh yeah. We go. Yeah.
They're just like mesmerized by this. And Joe just goes, "Here, you gotta see this." And he hands them my lead sheet. I'm just standing there. Yeah, I'm like 15, whatever. Just scared. I have no idea what's going on here. And it gets passed from Jack. He hands it to Eddie. He hands it to Alan. Eddie looks at them and he goes, "Break his hands now."
Dude, you always had the best freaking
and I was like,
lead sheets. I'm telling you.
I'm like, what do you mean break my? And like Joe just looks at then Joe just kind of looks at me. He goes, "You're in, kid." And he just marks me out. He goes, "You're out of the stock room. You're going to start doing lead sheets now." And so I progressed, and then they let me start doing the scores, and I started adding in the string parts, and then that's when it took off. And then, so they knew that I was in. I was doing.
Can I just say something here? Years later, Soy Cowboy did its first album, and we got you to do the string arrangements.
Yeah.
And I think I remember, if I'm not mistaken, the musicians noting how beautiful your copying was.
Yeah. That was always the thing. Now, here's the thing about that. Mm-hmm. Is that, like I say, it was really more because I was growing up thinking that, I'm not going to mince words, man. I thought music was really kind of a side thing.
Yeah.
I didn't take it seriously as I didn't really, because we were broke. We were starving. We were alcohol. I was just like, man, I got to dig myself out of this quagmire somehow, man.
Uh-huh.
It's not music for sure. That's how my dad is trying. It's not working. I'm going to try something. I'm going to be an architect or something.
Yeah.
Anyway. So yeah, that's why I was just every day I was just drawing blueprints for houses and stuff like that. Just drawing like with a ruler and a straight edge and just unbelievable skills with the lettering and things like that. I was drawing blueprints when I was like before a teenager, you know. So that's why I said, then I talked my dad into doing his class, and then my charts were just like, whoa. And I noticed that the musicians sounded much better playing music that they could really read. Wow. Uh-huh. And then like the messy ones, they're just like, you can hear it in the sound.
Right.
So I made a point to really do that. And then like, this is for years and years and years. So yeah, you're right. The musicians really appreciate it. And to the point where Danny Wallen, he is the greatest engineer of all time. I mean, he was the guy who did Woodstock, you know, back from the 60s. And he actually gave me one of his Woodstock pins. It was like an honor, man. He gave me his handmade speakers in them. And he was like my father kind of, because I would be sitting in the booth next to him, you know.
Right. Well, they're recording your stuff.
Yeah, huge movies. And we were on the front lines every time, man. And he would just like go, wow, I don't even have to move any of the faders on your scores, man. I can just like set them and they're fine. Like
because you wrote in the dynamics.
Yeah, the the mix, the orchestration is built so that it mixes.
It can be written.
You don't got to go diving for the trumpet. You don't got to dive, you know, with the mixer and everything like flat across, mic'd overhead, and it's internally balanced.
Yeah.
So I remember, man, that's just the greatest point. It was on that one of those Lisa Gerard movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you arranged for Lisa Gerard of Dead Can Dance.
Yeah, Dead Can Dance.
That was a good part of your career.
Yeah. And so she goes, during one of the takes, I'm out there conducting, and I come back into the booth, and she's like really having an emotional kind of moment. And like, I go over and I'm going like, what's going on? Are you okay? What's happening? And she's like crying. And I go, are you okay? and she goes, yeah. Danny just said, she goes, yeah, Danny just, during that take, he said, yeah, the strings only play that way for Scott. And she's like, and she goes, I love it. And oh my God, I'm like, oh, whoa.
Hey,
this technique is really working.
That's obviously. She was crying tears of joy for your arrangements.
Tears of joy. That pretty much sums up the whole history.
That is the first bit of our history, right?
It really does.
Okay.
And shows us how we got to where we are today. Because that then took off. Once people saw how much better it was to smoke smaller quantities of higher potency marijuana, how much healthier it was.
Oh, yeah.
And it really elevated the consciousness starting there up at the epicenter of Coldwater and Ventura, and just rippled itself out. And that's why on every street corner there is a pot store.
That must be the reason, especially in the valley.
Started with us.
So, thank you very much, Scotty. Cali High has been blessed to be here with Scott Smalley today, amazing arranger and friend of mine for 60 years. Scotty?
Hip hip hooray. Cheerio, Manny.
All righty.
round. Could it be a taxi ride or just a little walk away? The flowers in the alley really speak for themselves. Somewhere down the river she's waiting for me in another world. There's a feeling I get when I look at my room. There's something outside in the comforting gloom. Could it be a taxi ride or just a little walk away? Have I escaped or am I an escapist? Somewhere down the river she's waiting for me in another world. Here we go. There's something about there's something about there's something about my girl. 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 Good-looking girl in a large water jar, a lizard on the wall and a ceiling fan spins round and round. Could it be a taxi ride or just a little walk away? The flowers in the alley really speak for themselves. Somewhere down the river she is waiting for me in another world. Somewhere down the river she's waiting for me in another world. Something down the river is waiting for me in another world. Another world. Another world. The mind is incomprehensible, exceedingly subtle. It wanders wherever it desires. Therefore, let the wise aspirant watch over the mind. A well-guarded mind brings happiness.